Perfect. Perfect.
We are live.
Amazing. Hello and welcome everyone to Beyond the Tech, how learning leaders unlock AI's real value, brought to you today by Deloitte and Docebo. So before we get started, I'd love everybody to just introduce yourself in the chat, let us know where you're joining from. We're going to be talking all things AI and workflow design. And I personally have named my LLM of choice. So I call her Kathy because ChatGPT is a chatty Kathy. And so if you have named your LLM of choice, I would love to also know the name that you have given it. If you can add that in the chat as well. Oh, we've got some Ontario, we've got Missouri, Munich. Oh, wow, we've got quite the global audience joining. Nobody else has named their LLM. Claudette, okay. For Claude, I love it. Amazing, amazing. Nudge, perfect. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. Oh, I've got a coach. Okay, perfect, perfect. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I wanted to make sure I was very vulnerable there. You guys didn't leave me hanging, so I appreciate it. My name is Melissa Krumenis. I am the Senior Director of Learning here at Docebo. And I am absolutely thrilled to have you with us today for a conversation that really goes beyond tools and tech hype and into what actually drives AI value inside organizations. And so I'm joined today by Jason McGill. He is the managing director at Deloitte. And Jason works with global organizations that are navigating workplace transformation and AI adoption. So, Jason, thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Melissa. It's great to be with you all. And I am joining from Indianapolis, Indiana. I didn't put it in the chat, but I have not given any pet names to ChatGPT yet. But I did tell my son that he should submit his Christmas list to Santa GPT. So maybe we'll trademark that one.
Oh, I love this. I absolutely love this. I might have to steal that for my kiddos as well. So. Before we jump into some great conversation with Jason, I do want to cover just a few housekeeping reminders for you all. We absolutely love our Docebo community. And so we love to see you all chatting and, adding information in the chat. If you do have some Q&A questions, which we'll have time for at the end of today's session, please add those in the Q&A section so we make sure and surface those to the panelists, so to our speakers here. And then also as a reminder, this session is recorded, so we will email you a link to be able to rewatch that in the coming days as well. So what are we going to talk about today, you guys? We're going to talk about AI value realization. So many people are investing in AI, but how do you know that you're truly getting value from that? Also, we're going to be taking a little bit of a fireside chat approach. So after Jason shares with us some of his insight and research from AI value realization, we're going to take a look at some of the questions that come to mind and a little bit of how we're thinking about it at Docebo as well. And then finally, we'll leave some time there at the end for you all to share your questions. So just a reminder again, put those in the Q&A, not in the chat, but please engage in the chat. We want to see what you all are thinking as well. A few other quick notes to share. If this is one of your first webinars with Docebo, you may not know that Docebo is an approved SHRM recertification general provider. So what that means is that today's webinar is qualifying for you to get a PDC, so a professional development credit, to maintain your SHRM accreditation or your SHRM certification, so SHRM CP or SHRM SCP. And that is at no cost to you. We also are approved, we're a pre-approved provider for ATD Certification Institute, which means that you can use today's webinar to both help you qualify to take your sit for your ATD tests or to maintain that certification as well. So stick around till the end. We'll be sharing the SHRM code with you and the evaluation that you'll take in order to qualify for those. So before we get started, we've been talking a lot. I've been talking a lot. I want to hear from you all. Where would you say that your organization is today in terms of seeing real value from AI? So are you still in the process? Value TBD? maybe you're seeing some value, but it's mostly vibes and pilot projects. Real value is happening, but please don't ask us for proof. Or if you're like my daughter in her Taylor Swift era, AI is basically an unpaid intern with superpowers. So where is this for you all? What are you all thinking? And maybe it's none of the above. Are we seeing any answers coming in? Can we reveal the results? Do we have some results here? I don't know if we're getting, oh, I want to know where'd it go?
It's shared. Do you want me to?
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Let me know. Where did we come up? Oh, there it is. Oh, it's pretty even. Okay, that's kind of interesting to me. So we have a pretty even disbursement. Most of us, about 25% across all four, and then just a couple of us that maybe aren't quite in any of those four categories. So amazing. Well, now that we know where we've started, I want to make sure that, we see that this is exactly why the conversation matters, right? And so, Jason, Deloitte works with organizations all across the world. And I'm sure you're hearing from a lot of them that are either measuring the value of AI or they're looking for ways to measure the value of AI. And so I would love if you could share some of that research with us and the insights that you all have uncovered through your research and through these conversations.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, and great to be with everyone today once again. And yeah, as Melissa mentioned, my name is Jason McGill. I'm managing director in Deloitte Consulting's U.S. Human Capital practice. We're about 9,000 professionals across the U.S. and India. And I would venture to say that not a day goes by, or probably not even a call goes by, where there is not some semblance of the word AI or the impact of AI across the variety of things that we do and we serve our clients. And I'm not surprised to see the results of the survey, because I think, and anecdotally, I can tell you that in conversations that we are having, and certainly the research that we've done as well, it's clear that people are at different starting points in their maturity. And where I work, for example, most of my focus is in the tech sector, and so as you would imagine, there's a lot greater maturity, certainly more pilots and experimentation happening than you might see in other sectors. But that said, we're seeing it across the board, from manufacturing to financial services to government and public sector clients. Everyone is really focused on the impact that AI is having on their business and on their workforce. And so, in terms of the return, more specifically, a lot of and we'll talk a lot about this today. There's been a number of high-profile articles. There's the MIT study, right? And there's a lot of noise in the system about AI, maybe not paying back on the investment, or not seeing the return on investment that leaders are expecting. And our firm belief is that part of the reason for that, or a very significant part of the reason for that, is because there has not been enough of an emphasis on the human element, right? And really, that's where your edge will come in, and in an area or a market that's sort of democratized, where everybody has AI. It's really going to be those that can really scale and focus on their human edge that are going to be the winners in this market. So just a little bit more about me. As Melissa also mentioned, I do help clients really transform and evolve their talent strategies, org structures, change strategies, learning skills, enablement, and ultimately also their human and machine, or AI strategy, to meet their business needs. And as I mentioned, I do focus in the tech industry. I work a lot with workforces that are on the go-to-market side of the business in those organizations. So think sales, customer success, support, and even into the customer and partner ecosystem. And so that's really given me I'd say a first chair view of the impact that AI has been having over the last 18 months. As I said, adoption is absolutely accelerating at a very rapid pace. In my 20 plus year consulting career, I've seen a few sort of pivotal moments, whether it's financial crisis, the pandemic, right? But this just feels different. The pace of change and the level of disruption that I have observed over the last year is significant to everyone's business, including our own in the consulting services space. But as I mentioned, value realization is certainly still very inconsistent. It's exciting to be talking with a group like this because I think all of us are sort of at the forefront and sort of like pushing the bounds and exploring the frontiers in various ways of what's going to be possible when you combine that human potential with the technology and platform that's provided by AI. And particularly with learning professionals and leaders that are work with Docebo. We at Deloitte enjoy an alliance with Docebo that we've had for a couple of years. And we feel like that alliance is in place because we have a very shared philosophy in terms of transforming the way that organizations approach learning and talent development, right? Whether that's for their workforce, their extended workforce, or even their customer partner ecosystem. And we think it's a very nice complement to our consulting experience in that space with the leading and scalable platform that Docebo's technology provides. And certainly it's all towards furthering some of these outcomes that we've been talking about of modernizing work and the workforce, and including AI. So today we'll be talking a lot about that scaling of the human edge, and this slide here kind of gets to our philosophy that at a very high level of what we're talking about in the market with clients every single day, right? The intersection of technology, people, and work is really the secret sauce in terms of what's going to determine which organizations are the winners in this market and where the laggards are and then who's going to be playing catch up. And again, this isn't to say that technology is not an important part of the equation. It absolutely is. It's more about, how do you create, redesign the work and then think about the needs of the workforce as that technology is changing in order to drive the outcomes that you're after. As an example, I think, if we think about even, learning management system like Docebo and the technology that it's providing and the investments that it's making in the areas of AI, right? There's certainly a lot of capabilities and analytics that can help really rapidly illuminate where you have skills gaps that are going to enable kind of more agile reskilling, workforce moves that are really table stakes now, right? This isn't the days or the eras where you can spend, a year or 18 months creating a skills taxonomy and then doing assessments and all that sorts of things, right? Like organizations need to know now what work can be repurposed to AI, where agents can be introduced into the flow, and what does that mean for the workforce, and what new skills do the workers need. And that's just going to be a continuous process. So I think having tools like the ones that Docebo provides is essential more than ever. Also, if you think about how learning is happening for all of us that are learning professionals, we've been talking for probably a decade now about learning in the flow of work, right? But it's sort of, I think, hyper, prominent now because as these processes are changing way more rapidly, and it's a very different dynamic when you've got an agent on your team, or you're getting the benefits out of an AI intervention in your flow of work that that can help your work be more insightful and meaningful and productive. But that just also means that you're going to really need to learn on the fly more consistently. And so having tools like Docebo that really embed learning in the flow of work is top of mind for leaders in every function of the organization. We're actually in the middle of so Deloitte, I mentioned, we're being disrupted by AI, and all of the consulting services businesses are. And I would say we're early or middle of this journey ourselves, right? And how do we deliver services like consulting in a consistent platform, and really bring some of our AI capabilities to our clients. And we certainly have a number, like we have a suite called Ascend. We have a lot of things that we're doing in the area of like workforce to like really analyze workforce and understand where AI can be disruptive, where processes, right? And that's really table stakes expectations, right? As in many ways, consulting is turning into much more of a products plus services business and less of a pure services play. And that's been happening for a number of years, but now it's like almost just like the whole dynamic is changing. So why don't we move to the next slide? And Melissa, did you have anything to add before I move ahead?
I really just think this is directly in line with what we're seeing as well, and learning practitioners in general. If they've ever heard me in another webinar, I always say it's really about being a performance partner. And I think AI is sort of the same thing, right? We're wanting to throw a solution at it, and we have to really understand the problem. And we have to understand what that workflow and what the work design should actually be. So you mentioned earlier you were not surprised by our results at all because AI comes up in every single conversation. So I would love for you to share with us, what are you actually hearing from your clients?
Well, that's exactly where we're going to go next. So we have been, so we're, working for an organization with the global reach of Deloitte, as you mentioned, Melissa, gives us tremendous access and reach to, the highest levels of many leading organizations. We've been in the trenches with a lot of C-suite, CXOs across the board, whether it's CIOs, CEOs, right, and even CHROs and chief learning officers, and we do that across our industry verticals. And the questions that we're hearing consistently in those conversations that our clients are grappling with, regardless of industry or role, there's a fair amount of consistency, and we've kind of grouped them into these three main themes or buckets that are the anchors that we're building around in terms of making sure that we bring the right services and solutions to our clients. So first up is really around that $1 million question of return on investments, right? So we're hearing a lot of like, why are we not seeing return on investments the way that we've sort of created this value promise around AI, and where because I'm not seeing that, where can I look to find those efficiency gains? And so in many cases this is a symptom, I would say, of maybe not even starting with like a clear definition of return on investment early on, and sort of like maybe focusing a little too much on just kind of more general business outcomes versus like really going through the effort of doing a business case and defining quantitative metrics and a timeline for how those would be realized. I've seen many organizations that I work with that are very top down. So in terms of this, so they'll say, hey, we're working on our plan for next year, our budget for next year. You need to find 10%, 15% by using AI, right? And that's it. Like it ends there, and then it's up to the business leads or the function leads to go figure that out, right? And so there's been a lot of, I would say, shoot first and aim later type behaviors around workforce reductions and things of that nature to achieve those sort of like top down goals just based on this hypothesis that we're going to be more efficient through AI. But I've also seen a lot of organizations that are sort of stuck, right, or in that middle bucket here, stasis and risk. So because they're not clear, to the detailed level that they might want around those impacts, but they don't have all the data of like looking into the future, forecasting into the future. What will this do to my financials? What will this do to my org structure? They get a little stuck, right? And this is where some of those tools, like the ones I mentioned, that can quickly look at their job architecture and tell them, hey, here's all the tasks and skills that could be disrupted by AI that you should be looking at, or taking it a step further, then creating sort of we call it organizational digital twins of, okay, if you were going to restructure your organization this way to accommodate these new AI workflows and agents and reskilled people, or workforce reductions in many cases, yes. What will that actually look like, and how will that play out? They need that validation. They need that data to feel comfortable moving forward with these investments in AI, and also really, action on where to start. And then that gets to the third bucket here, which is, once I've got a plan, how do I actually start to string together AI across the business, create, transition my org in a way that's not going to be too disruptive, that thinks about change management, that thinks about skill building of new skills that are needed to operate in this new model, and really take that out over time. And this is very much like, and also how do I keep the culture of my organization, right? Like that's a big one as well. So these are the conversations that we're having every day in the market. But I would love to hear in the chat or Q&A, there's what is everybody else hearing out there around these challenges, or what challenges are you seeing in your organizations?
Yeah, definitely share with us, what are those challenges that you all are seeing for sure. This just resonated with me again when we're talking particularly around top down, right? Learning professionals, every learning professional has had the experience that someone comes to them and says, we need a course on this, right? And sometimes it's not a course, sometimes it's a resource, or it's a communication gap, or it's an alignment, challenge. And so just what you're saying is really resonating with me. And across all of these, the really what I'm seeing, the theme that I'm seeing is that people are looking for clarity and they're looking for guidance. And so I know you and I had chatted a little bit, I believe it was last week, around this concept of an anti-pattern. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is an anti-pattern, and what are the top anti-patterns that you're seeing in your client base and in your research as well? So I'm going to jump over to that next slide. I think this one's a really interesting concept.
Yes. So, so like when we dig into the challenges that I talked about, right? What we're, there's some observable anti-patterns, right? So things that, and what we mean by that, it's like things that feel logical because they may have worked in the past, but in this disrupted AI world that we're now in, they actually become counterproductive. And we were talking about earlier how this kind of reminds us of that, like, definition of insanity is doing the same thing quote, right? Which is widely misattributed to Einstein, but actually I think comes from like a self-help manual. But
it's still accurate. It's
a good quote, and it seems like something a smart guy like Einstein would have said. But yeah, like, so the reason why it's different now, it's kind of a nuance, right? A nuanced reason, and it's like AI is a it's a technology that produces outcomes based on patterns and likelihoods. It's not a guaranteed result every time, where in the past, when you implement technology, it's because you're trying to automate a process or drive a very consistent process, or which will get you to the right and same result. And with AI, outputs vary because it's learning over time, it's analyzing data and trends over time, and it doesn't necessarily follow predetermined or predictable business rules or coding, right? And so a lot of times that's a big shift for enterprises, because they're very used to like this mindset of playing by the deterministic rules, we call them, and that mismatch of determinism and sort of more pattern based logic is kind of the first challenge across these anti-patterns that we see. So you asked about some examples. The first one is like technology only thinking. And I don't think this is anything new, right? Like even before AI was a big thing, there was always, this tendency sometimes to like lead with technology when you really needed to think about the people in the process, right? And so just buying licenses for your favorite AI tools or rolling them out in the organization might feel like progress. Or if you create your own, GPTs or your own, internal LLMs, right? And we all have them. And they're great. I mean, it's really transformed work, but, unless you also are thinking about the work itself and actually redesigning the work, not just like thinking about AI as a different way to do the same thing, the value is often not there. And so prioritizing technology over these other elements can often lead to this feeling of, that the solution's ineffective or not giving me the return. They think about some of the great products that Docebo offers in this vein, right? So, to really unlock their value, you definitely have to marry the technology with your work design around, learning, whether it's, some of the content creation tools, right? So, you can generate great, content that's a high fidelity, high degree of the way there. But are you also thinking about, well, what does this do to my instructional design process or my governance and intake process for learning, right? And should I, make pivots in my learning governance process because now I'm getting great insight, better data insights from some of the learning intelligence tools that I have in Docebo, or, we've got this great AI virtual coach now, and I'm seeing this a lot in like sales organizations, right? Like sales coaches as like being, AI, right? Like, so does that, because we have this, like, does this mean we should be changing the way that we think about onboarding and the ramp time and designing our performance management motion differently because we have this, right? And so the tools are there, the tools are great, but you really need to think about kind of the work around it so that you can deploy these in a way that's going to get you the ROI that you want. The second anti-pattern that I would probably call out as an example is what's called the process trap. So this is again the one I mentioned earlier, right? So enterprises are always of the mind that consistency equals quality. You line out the steps, you have dependencies, you put it down, and you make it, memorialize it, and make sure everybody kind of follows the process, right? And again, with some of the more legacy, large cloud, ERP technologies, deterministic technologies, the same input would produce the right, the same output. But as we've said, AI doesn't work that way. It's a variable technology. And the power is really in, can we find better ways to do things, right? To get to those outcomes and new novel outcomes for our organization that are going to be value add. So just like cramming AI into a process or maybe being top down and cramming AI into your function and saying, find efficiency, you really are not setting yourself up to get the advantages right off the bat. Not to say that you can't, retroactively get there, but that's not how we would typically recommend starting. What we would rather organizations do and what we talk to our clients about is, asking more of a question of like, what are the outcomes? Are we going to get better outcomes? And what, do we need to get the same outcomes, right? So these are, these are a lot of the top of mind questions when we talk to our clients.
I heard you say a few times now that it's a work design problem.
Yes.
And I find that really, really interesting. I think it's powerful because it's where learning truly becomes central and not just this peripheral thing, right? We have to truly think about how work is being designed holistically. And so I want to take us into this next slide that you have shared, I think is really interesting, which is about how an organization and the workforce and the design of that work have to work together. So AI is reshaping not only who does the work, but how it gets done and where really learning and performance augmentation fit into that system. So can you walk us through a little bit of that?
Yes. So work, they like, I didn't come up with this, but we use a very simple analogy to sort of talk about the importance of, including the work redesign in the equation, right? So it's, if you were to try to push AI adoption without thinking about the work redesign, it's sort of like putting a jet engine on a horse-drawn carriage. And what we recommend with the work redesign is a little bit more like you're actually redesigning the entire vehicle to enable the engine to operate at full, at this new full power. And so the point is that, to realize the full potential value of AI, it does require intentional focus, time, and thought, and certainly investment. So, as well as like, some of those very like valuable human capabilities that we've been talking about for years, right? Like innovation and endurance and agility. Because organizations that bring those skills to bear in terms of how they're using AI and certainly embrace this idea that they need to redesign the work. Our research actually tells us that they are twice as likely to exceed the ROI expectations that they set out when it comes to AI as compared to those that don't. So what work design is, it's really about the choices that we make in our work journeys, and those choices are very numerous and broad, right? It's shaping how what work looks like, not just what gets done, but how it gets done, and who's doing it, right, and under what circumstances. So who's doing it might be it might be your current workforce, it might be new workforce, it might be contingent external workforces, it might be agents, right? And that really requires a lot of thought because, and this is one that has come up a few times, and it's always an interesting debate, which is if you have an agent that like screws up something, who gets in trouble for that, right? Like who is the manager of that agent, or who governs the agents? And if you ask 10 organizations, you'll get 10 different, 10 people within the same organization, you'll often get 10 different answers.
Yeah.
So I think it's very early, right, in kind of grappling with some of these more like existential questions about AI. But there's three main levels that we think about that you see here that we when we look at this idea of like work design, right? And so the organizational level, which is your org structure, the governance, right? And interaction between different parts of the organization, and then also your organizational cultures, right? So like what are the or culture, so like what are the norms around AI? How do we make sure it actually this shift actually sticks? Were we doing change management? Do we have the right operating models in the first place to take advantage of these new tools? The next level is the workforce. So this is where, and as learning professionals, this is where we spend a lot of time. So this is where the roles and skills angle comes in. So as the work changes, we need to help our organizations prepare and have the right skills, right? And is that development and through learning? Are we actually going out and adding this to our talent acquisition models? Are we hiring third parties to sort of outsource the skills when we need them, right? And so and then how do you use technologies like Docebo to then accomplish that and amplify those skills and capabilities? Most organizations that I work with have some degree of an AI academy that they have introduced that either in a part of their organization or enterprise wide. And we actually have a Deloitte one as well that we offer to our clients that we can customize. But in most cases, I would say there's like three main tiers that I've seen organizations pursuing, and one would be sort of like fluency at the base, and AI for all type things, or using the tools that are introduced in your organization. The second layer is people that are more focused on building agents, or need to have a little bit more savvy and technical capability to like really understand how agents are going to disrupt their function. And then you get to the top of the pyramid, which is thinking more enterprise-wide, agent-to-agent conversations, really transforming the business through multi-agent interaction and new business models. And that pyramid kind of holds true now. There's certainly variations based on level in the organization, and what an AI for executives look like versus like middle management. But and to some degree, it sort of follows that level of complexity up the pyramid. And then the last item I'll mention on this slide here is like the work itself. So, this is where you really look at the processes of work and have to ask yourself, what can be still needs to be done by a human, what could be automated, or what could actually be augmented, where it's humans plus machines, right? And so those need to be redesigned, and it's not always evident, but it does require some intention. And this is another area where I've started to see a lot of accelerator type tools being used. So, workforce, you've got things like Workforce Analyzer or like Fathom, right? And then work at the work level, what we've got, there's a few out there, but like Deloitte, we have this old thing called industry print, which has been around since like I joined Deloitte 20 years ago. But basically, you go down to the very like distilled level of every single process and sort of trace it back up to shareholder value. Well, what we've done now is to push that in through AI models and say, okay, like let's run this on your organization's, work processes and understand what could be changed or disrupted by AI, right? So really understanding that, so that you can then, rethink the work and also create new work processes to get to new outcomes is what's exciting.
There's so much value in this slide and the questions and what is changing in those examples. I think it's really consistent with what we're seeing the conversation with our own customers, which is truly around that workforce design and how the skills that are needed and the roles that are needed and the way that we collaborate across the business has changed and does change. And it's those learning professionals that are able to come in and support and develop those things. I did a city series in, I believe it was San Jose, and I just read an article I shared with that group, which was the half-life of skills now is, I believe it was less than 5 years, and for technical skills, it's less than 2.5. So then the challenge becomes, how are we designing work and developing our people in a way that helps them keep up with that technology and that change so that they are able to continue to realize value from it? So I would love for you to share. I know that Deloitte has really identified some key beliefs that they have. So maybe share some of what you all are standing on here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and by the way, I was at that event. It was a great event, beautiful venue as well. So yeah, I mean, some of the things that we really have, thinking through all these questions and all these things, steps to redesign the work, right? We've kind of distilled that into some of the core beliefs that we think are important for organizations that are starting to take this journey. So one, I've said it a few times already, but this idea of realizing the value of human and machine collaboration, it's not necessarily like instinctive or intuitive, and it does require thought and thoughtful design and time. It's not going to just happen by accident or happenstance if you introduce these tools. So that workforce design or that work design and the transformations that come around it really, it needs to have the right rigor. It needs to have, like any sort of transformation, needs to have the right resources against it. You need to base it on data, and not just sort of like gut instinct, like, hey, you can save 10%, do it. And so, and they're also recognizing that like there's different ways that humans and machines can be related. So it's a term I hear all the time is like human in the loop or on the loop, right? And that's great, but it's not enough. Like those are choices, and there are pros and cons and consequences for those choices, right? So making sure that you're kind of being intentional and deliberate as you make those choices, and how it's going to get to your outcomes. Another topic that we could probably have a whole webinar on is like this idea of trust. And so, trust in AI is a huge topic in the media and certainly one that we talk to our clients about a lot. And we have something called Trust ID, right? And so, and some of the research we've done actually tells us that workers that are more, that trust their agents are 10 times more likely to say that those agents are actually creating value, right? And so to some extent, AI is only as good as the people that are using it. I actually worked with an organization, large software company that was had a number of first-party AI tools that they'd introduced into their customer support flows, but the adoption was just not where they wanted it to be. And then what really it came down to was trust, right? And so they actually took a select group of them, brought them out to the main headquarter campus, did a whole day on hearing from them and letting them build agents and having a sort of a Shark Tank type thing and doing a lot of like fluency building and things like that. And the adoption went up 7x within 2 days. And it really, yes, the learning was great and impactful and all that, but if you really boil down to some of the reason why, it's this idea of trust, right? And that's true of any job. It's, are these agents going to help me? Are they going to take my job? That kind of thing, right? It's important to think through that. So if you put these core beliefs together, I think, thinking about the work, the organization, and how are you going to sustain the change, then you start to get into more of a motion around how AI is going to be embedded as part of your business strategy. So that said, don't be stuck in that motion and realize that you're going to need to keep adapting as you go to make sure that these behaviors are sticky and consistent. And yeah, I mean, also, I guess also I'll just close on this by saying that, this story is still very early, right? So it's not going to stay static. We're going to need to continue to think about these everything I've talked about today, because no matter what industry you're in, there the moments where you're going to be transforming your strategy or your business or learning will certainly be, will certainly change and also really require you to. What I will say would be constant is that it's going to be important to continue to think about how you need to capitalize on that people or human edge that we've talked about today.
I think what is it, the old adage, the only constant is change.
Yeah, maybe Einstein said that too. I don't know. But.
So I think that's a great way for us to just think about being able to prepare our teams to be, future ready. And I want to make sure that we get through a few last slides, and I want to make sure our audience gets time to ask some of their questions. So just tell us a little bit around what it means to build that AI-enabled learning organization. What should we be considering?
Yeah, I mean, so if we sort of zoom into learning, the learning function specifically, that, I think it's a recognition that learning has a really important role to play, right? Like we've known this for years as learning professionals, but I think the recognition is that because of all those things, because this isn't intuitive, as I said, then we need to help people we need to help people be able to think in this way. And part of that is change management for sure, but a big part of it is skill building and learning. And so it's having some very real impacts to the business of learning as well. I would say both in terms of the type of learning experience that is being delivered, as well as to the operational side of learning and how learning is delivered. And we have a number of ways that that's happening. But I think a few things to consider as you look down the right side of the page here. How is learning not just kind of like generating content, courses, delivery, but also kind of creating the conditions where learning can happen together with AI. Oftentimes in many organizations I work with, learning has a role in what I would call more knowledge management. And that has been completely blown up by this, because now it's so easy, to get to information versus trying to look for something, in some corporate intranet or that kind of thing. And I think if I think about Docebo and the LMS, how are you feeding into that better experience now too? And then what are the, there's, it's not just about the AI, right? Or skills it's not just about prompt engineering skills or coding or whatever. It's actually the business is going to change. There's going to need to be shifts to what you produce, how you produce it, how you engage with your customers. I think about salespeople that have to actually now sell AI software that work for software companies, right? It's very different to sell a solution, an AI solution, than selling a static product, right? So learning is going to need to help those people make that shift. So those examples are countless.
let's explore a little bit around, you had shared with us this idea of Gen AI across the learning value chain. Is there anything specific you want to call out here and maybe share where people should start thinking about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, as I mentioned, like there's numerous use cases as there are in a lot of functions in terms of how AI can actually be introduced into learning. But this is just a kind of a list here of like things that we see as being sort of like already there and being incorporating a lot of organizations that we work with. But what this really means is that the whole concept of instructional design, ADDIE, whatever model you use, is disrupted, right? Because this is happening very continuously. You're getting very, smart assessment, adaptive learning, even things like, or I've seen like really technical certifications that carry value in the market. You've got AI that can actually regenerate the sandboxes that are needed for that, that can actually proctor assessments, adapt questions, right? So labor intensive things that are now being taken out of the value chain, which free up resources to focus on more strategic things. But some of these things have been around for a while, like personalization, right? It's just, it's the ways that it's happening now are certainly being accelerated. And then, it also has implications for like your vendor strategy, right? Whether it's thinking through how the technologies you have, like Docebo, are part of this and can work in concert with other parts of your AI stack, or vendor ration. Like, you may not need to spend as much on translation anymore. I hope nobody's on from like TransPerfect or anything like that. But there's just a lot of like business of learning things that are being disrupted by the introduction of AI.
So we have covered a ton of insights, right, around how people can get more value from not only from AI, but learning professionals in general. I think there's a wealth of knowledge to get here. And so if you all want to learn more, I invite you to discover and, reach out and look into Deloitte's latest insights. I'm sure that Jason would be happy to help connect you with somebody at Deloitte to set up and talk about that more if that's something you all want to do. I do want to make sure we have time for our last few questions from our audience. And so I think the biggest theme and the thing that I took away from this is recognizing that people remain the competitive advantage, right? AI is only as good as how we design work and how we enable our people to be able to effectively use it. And so I want to make sure I have a few interactive questions from the group, or for the group, excuse me. How many of you, this is our first one, how many of you are really rolling your eyes now almost when you hear AI, right? It's part of every single conversation. So I want to know, this first one's a test one to see how everybody's thinking. And these are anonymous, so don't worry, and we're not going to come hunt you down. What is your immediate reaction when you hear the phrase AI? There's a link in the chat for you, so you guys can click on that link. It's going to populate up here and start letting us know what your reactions are. So your choice is AI again. We didn't finish the last initiative. Or is it the robots are taking over? Oh, I should probably learn this. Or my productivity era begins now. Okay, so it looks like we have a lot of excitement really around the way that you're reacting to the phrase AI. And I have to be vulnerable and admit, a year ago, I had a very different reaction. Now I'm like, oh goodness, this is amazing. I'm so ready. Like, let's do it. Probably a year or two ago, that wouldn't have been my reaction. And Deloitte, excuse me, Docebo went through our own AI Academy journey. If you missed, we did a whole 5-part webinar series around how we built our AI Academy. I invite you to go back and look at those recordings and see what you can take away there. So next question, this one's a little fun too, right? What is a word or phrase that best captures the value you want from AI? A word or a phrase that best captures the value you want. Okay, you want it to simplify. Oh, productivity, efficiency, time savings. I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked by any of those. I think those are or what a lot of people are looking for. I always love a word cloud. I love seeing these. I'll share later on LinkedIn so you guys can see the final result here. So this is amazing. I have learned so much. I want to make sure that you all get to ask any questions that you all might have. So we have a few out in the Q&A. The very first one is, and this is for you, Jason, are your clients asking you about how Deloitte is using AI in its own work for clients? And if so,
Yes.
how do you respond?
Yes, it is absolutely. It's table stakes, right? And if we're going to remain competitive, the expectation is that we are bringing this both in terms of how do we make our own work more efficient and effective, but also what are the accelerators that we can bring to our clients that will actually help get to some of that ROI or outcomes that they need from AI. So we have a big suite of AI tools that are proprietary Deloitte tools that we can apply in a lot of different contexts. We have something called Zora that, it's a mix of sort of advisory analytics and also agents that we deploy a lot, for example, in the finance realm. So if you think about, all of your accounting and financial functions within a business, right? Like we've got agents that can either give you better, rapid, and more speedy insights, and then actually perform some of the work. That's being broadened out into supply chain and even like HR. New stuff's coming online every day. In the area of learning, we actually have some content generation tools that we bring, whether it's in a very more high-end bespoke learning program, or even we do a lot of work around digital adoption or implementations of new technology. So we have some content development tools in the AI space. But the one thing that we are very mindful of in the world of services, and I mentioned earlier, sort of a shift towards more of a product plus services mindset, right? But we recognize that there are talent implications, right? So there's not, just because we don't need somebody in the room taking notes anymore, for example, that doesn't mean we shouldn't have, because there's a lot of learning that happens by those experiences, right? And, I think back to even my own consulting career, right? So much of how, what I've learned about clients and how to drive outcomes just, came from being in the room, right? So we're very sensitive to how do we remain cost competitive, impactful, do things better, faster, but also, not dilute the advisory value and expertise that we bring.
A few more questions we had come in. This is an interesting one. Does Deloitte resell their AI Academy so that other tech companies can leverage their courses to get their org up and ready? Is that something you all?
Yes, we do. We absolutely do. We actually have a package solution which is hosted on Docebo. It's great. But we also have the ability to do customization of that. So, creating both the digital experience and in many cases, organizations like for us to design a synchronous component of it, like that one I mentioned that had the AI day with their support function, right? We do that quite a bit. But there's different flavors. We have multiple layers, or SKUs, I guess you would call it, right? As far as AI for executives versus AI fluency, right? So we'd be happy to make that information available to you after this webinar. I'm happy to talk about how we can help.
Perfect. I know we are just about out of time. I'm going to take this last one, which actually it just jumped. Oh, there we go. Is this training recorded to potentially share with our upper management team? Yes, it will be, which is a great segue for us. So I do want to share the SHRM code again. I shared at the beginning of our time together today that you can use this to provide professional development credits to maintain your SHRM CP or SHRM SCP certification. And then also look out for an evaluation that you'll get at the very end of today's session. And you'll also get a link that you'll be able to access that recording out on the Docebo website, as well as other past webinars that we have. So do invite you to go take a look there. And then Jason has shared in the chat where you can go learn more about Deloitte's AI Academy. And again, if you want to learn more about how Docebo developed our own AI Academy, you can find that out on our website as well. So just want to say thank you to everyone that was able to join us today, and especially to Jason for sharing Deloitte's research and insights. And we can't wait to see you all in our next webinar.